There we are. All right. Hello, hello. Welcome back. Another episode of the Sunday Speedrunner Spotlight. Joined today by the Omnigamer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for bringing me on. It's been a little while since I've done one of these. I'm happy to chat as always on all the stuff that I've gone through.
I'm interested to dive in because you certainly have a pretty large history in the scene. So definitely a lot to talk about here. But if you could, uh, I guess, summarize what you've done and kind of introduce yourself, we can start there.
Summarize. All right. I guess at this point, I'm one of the OGs. I did my first speed runs back in 2011 or 2012. I know that my first runs went up on SDA. Now, there's already an old name in 2012. But previous to that, I had been hanging around speed running just casually, in the sense that in the pre-YouTube days, the only way to get video of high quality play of any given uh, portion of gaming that you were involved in was to find it in some peer-to-peer network, or in the case of SDA, it's just they had it all hosted there. So that was a novel piece at the time. And just for the days of that era, you would go looking around and it's just like, I think I'm pretty good at Mega Man X or something like that. And you want to define good. You want to be able to leverage that, figure out where you actually stack up. And a lot of times that's where SDA came in, because that was the only way that you'd actually find out, like, well, what does it mean to be good? Here are some people who have put a lot of effort into it to showcase how good they are at Super Metroid, at Metroid Prime, any number of those other more classical titles, and you actually have information. It's not just the video. You can watch, wow, what the heck is that? They just clipped through a wall. But you actually have some description of, well, here's how we set it up. Here's how all this went through. And that was kind of it was a very different era, but it was still exciting at the time. But way back when, that was like mid 2000s, that was all just, yeah, I'm going to go watch something. By the time it got to 2010, 2011, that era, that's when the marathon started. I became clued in probably around AGDQ 2011, which would have been, I guess, the first AGDQ after Classic Games Done Quick, and just watching. It's a very different environment from anything else that I had experienced up to that point. Prior to this, I actually was I'll say I was just a member of the competitive community in Super Smash Brothers Melee for a wide number of years, and it's more I changed that up after going through college, and I needed something else to just occupy my mind, my hands, get me working towards something really exciting and special. And that's where speedruns came in. I kind of rediscovered this cache of videos that I had been collecting since I was much younger, and like, this is something that I can do now. I don't have um, a whole lot of other things that are occupying my life as I was going through grad school, and just I needed something to occupy myself. And it turns out that not only was it really enjoyable, but I actually had a lot of talents and other just my mindset matched up pretty well with the whole speedrunning um, style. And from there, my first speedruns, I don't remember the exact order. Sky Blazer on Super Nintendo, Nier on Xbox 360, Suikoden 2 all came within those first couple of years. And my specialty and focus from there on was largely Super Nintendo, but realistically, it was games. You can kind of call them the hidden gem games, games that are fun or have unique mechanics, options, that kind of thing. And most likely people either haven't heard of them or they're not considered particularly good in a general sense. But for me, it's all about having an open playground, something where I can start from scratch, develop all of the knowledge base around that game, develop all of the skills and skips, glitches, anything else that can actually be fundamentally used towards trying to optimize it out. And that was the best part for me. Um, Being able to start to showcase some of that work through um, through the marathon events. So the first GDQ that I participated in was AGDQ 2013. And if you kind of are up on your GDQ history, that's like the old times. We were at somewhere called the 4-H Center in Washington, D.C. It was in the neighborhood of, like, let's say 80 people were in attendance, and pretty much it was universally speedrunners. of all sorts of different titles, all of them coming together, and I had a blast with that. I worked production stuff at a lot of the Smash Brothers events previously, so it was kind of a natural fit for me to jump on, help to assist with some of those. There's pictures of me way back then sleeping underneath a table because I was kind of operating the stream pretty much day in, day out. Just a lot of fun things going on with that. And from there on, I became a regular, well, a regular supporter, I suppose, and eventually staff with Games Done Quick, helping out with their production needs, helping out with their technical needs, and over the course of my many years with them, I've attended most of the events in the last 15 years, and of those, I've had 20, let's say 20 runs across different DDQs, all of them in my kind of more esoteric games, which means I'm probably running at 4 a.m. in the morning. But you know what? If it's all in service of being able to show off the passion, the things that I have been able to discover, and then try to help people discover their own way to do the same, that's the most important thing for me.
Mhm.
So that covers at least kind of the early years. I can uh, cover the in between and all the other pieces along the way. Was there anything in particular that you wanted to dig into before I find another piece of that pie?
It's just interesting that you like the whole like everything you have to do to start a speed run. You want to do
Mhm.
it, like the routing, the it's not just about execution. You someone's got to be the first person to document and start the community for a specific game, and sounds like that was something you definitely want to be a part of, because especially back then, if you're already doing obscure games, no one has documented anything yet.
No, that's for sure. I mean, I wasn't alone in that kind of endeavor. And here's a little tangent. The giant wall of games back there is predominantly Super Nintendo, as that's just my specialty in general. But the only reason I started collecting them at all, and this was back in the 2010s, is SDA had you'd call it a program, but it was just users, other players who essentially it was called Bad Game Exchange. We'll put it that way. And the whole point of it is that you acquire a game somehow and you basically challenge somebody else to speedrun it. And likewise, they will send you a bad game in exchange. And the goal is that for both of those participants to route it, go through it properly, get it submitted to SDA and accepted. And it actually, a fair number of people took it on, but I believe it was myself and Murphigator were the only two pair to actually complete. Both of us completed a run separately for the games that we submitted. I sent him Musha, Japanese Tale of Horror, Super Nintendo, of course, and he sent me Radical Rex, which is well, they lived up to their names. We'll
Mm,
put it that way.
I see.
They were definitely not the best games, but ended up still finding the fun in how to experience them, how to explore them, all the rest of that. And really, it's just that's part of the joy in it. And the reason I started building up all this is so that I could potentially send more bad games to other people. And it was kind of on me to go through. And at the time, I lived in a place where there was a lot of retro game shops pretty nearby, and that would just be my Saturday activity. I'd go around, I'd pick up a title. It's like, I don't recognize this at all. $2? Okay, cool. Yeah, toss it in there. Eventually led into a lot of other exploration and even a few other games that I personally ran myself just after kind of discovering them that way. So um, but yeah, back to the question on the the full stages of trying to perform the speed run. Realistically, like most of the games that I have run, there still is not a community, so to speak. I am whether I am the sole source of knowledge and execution and techniques and everything for those games. I try to document it to the best of my ability, but it's been more than a dozen years since I've started doing this. The internet has changed a lot, and the places where people go to find information, the way that it is communicated is all very different now than when I started. And a lot of my older runs, you can actually hear about it SDA had the option of when you submit your run, you can have an alternate audio track. And a wide variety of the runs that I submitted through that time um, do have an alternate audio track explaining here's the strategy here, here's why I performed this particular thing, here's a spot where I messed up and maybe lost a few seconds. But um, it's a it's a very different feel than the streaming where that happens live a lot of times now. But one way or another, it still captures a lot of the information. The notes, in addition, were a key part of that. All the SD submissions, you were encouraged to provide some notes on here's the strategy, here's the things that went right or wrong, and some other comments. Up to you to just message here's where it could go. And yeah, trying to capture a lot of that. A lot of that is still very valid as well. I'm fairly proud of the fact that I've done runs of, let's say, 24 games, and of those, I'm still top of the pack for, I would say, most of them. And the few people who have come out and tried to pick up these games that realistically nobody's ever heard of, I'm actually really excited anytime somebody comes through, tries to take it to that next level. Because if I am involved in that full process, a lot of the fun for me is actually in that middle staging, planning, figuring out what the optimal path would be. That doesn't mean that when I get to actually performing a run, I'm going to settle for less than what I feel is representative of a good run. But it's a different kind of satisfaction when 5 years after my last run of Congo's Caper, for example, somebody comes along, they either find something new or they just stick with it enough to the point that they actually do push it that much further, take it down another handful of seconds. And this most significantly happened in Nier and Suikoden 2. And between both of those is actually uh, a lot of them reference a lot of the data that I had put together and the strategies and other things that are going through. And then just it happened to be that my life moved on in a variety of ways. Those were longer runs in general, and just I didn't have the time to sink into continuing to perfect that, find new things, and realistically, there's more other games that I want to play and figure out. I want to keep chasing that those good chemicals, and I found the best way for that is just picking up new games.
Hmm.
Those communities have actually taken it quite a bit further, and you can still see a lot of the groundwork that I had laid there, and it's a good feeling overall.
Yeah, again, like all information has to start from some source, so
Hmm.
everything just gets built off of that, and over time, you can get a lot more information. It's just interesting. I only run like very popular games where all the information's kind of already there. I make
Hmm.
my random accidental discovery here and there, but yeah, I've never really got to sit down and just plan everything out with a clean slate. It's kind of all been done for me. So I haven't had
And
that
yeah,
experience yet.
that's the way that a lot of the games are going. Is that just as more and more people get involved in speedrunning, there's going to be fewer of those clean slate games left around. There's still plenty of them. You might just have to look a bit harder or purposefully blind yourself to what's already been done so that you can develop that kind of experience. And in some cases, I would actually encourage that, even for popular games. Like if I were to sit down and start playing Link to the Past, I know a lot of things about that game just having watched speedruns through the years. But if I was going to just say, I want to use this as a routing exercise, understand it myself, figure out things myself, try to cut yourself off from all those things because it's not about being at the top. It's about putting that experience together where you get to establish the puzzle pieces. And who knows, maybe over the course of doing that, you actually will find something new, different, another way of examining the game as it is that changes things. Granted, for the most popular games, probably not going to happen. But for something in the middle where there's maybe an established community, you can still. There's an amazing amount of information that can come from examining something with a new pair of eyes, and that's what I'd recommend to a lot of people. Just there's an entire world out there to try and explore in whatever your game of choice is, um, and finding the best way through is not, for the most part, ever going to be a fully established science. And realistically, there's always something more to come along from doing something different, doing something unexpected, or just encountering, like as you said, you might stumble across a new bug, a new exploit in some way or another that really changes up the calculus, and that can be some of the most rewarding activities of any of my own experiences doing speedruns of all sorts of games.
Hmm. And what's fun about a popular game is I'm gonna mention this because it happened recently. Is someone can just playing it casually discover some new thing and are just like, "What is this?" And then the speedrunners dive in and are like, "Oh, congratulations! You just accidentally discovered arbitrary code execution and lost levels. Thanks, random
Hmm.
Twitter user." uh,
Exactly. It's speedrunners are, I'll say that we're lucky in that a lot of the times that we uncover something new, it's not because we were looking for it. It's because well, when you play the game hundreds of times, there's room for things to just happen odd, and you recognize that quickly because you know exactly what's supposed to happen. And then when something else is out there, you immediately know, oh, this is weird. Let's dig into that. For a lot of other folks, you can think of it this way: is if speedrunners are going deep, we do hundreds, if not thousands, of runs in a given game. We have a lot of opportunity to experience those things. But on the other side, if it's just a popular game and there's thousands, if not millions, of people playing it, they also have a fair chance to just stumble into something. And the way that that reciprocates back through is it's interesting. And honestly, that's actually something I recommend a lot. Is don't just whenever you're trying to investigate a new speed run, um, don't just look at existing speedrun information, look at any kind of information. And in the old days, this would have been, yeah, just scrounge YouTube for any kind of video. You don't have to watch every Let's Play or anything like that, but start to look for just glitch videos or trick videos. Um, you'd also go to some other foreign language sites. There'd be a lot of information on Nico Nico at the time, where you'd see an entirely different approach over there, but something that might still be relevant in your own language's game, your own game's language. And just being able to scour information that way really helped in terms of, well, can I use this? Can I do that? In one of my own games, as it turns out, the game is called Metal Warriors. It's a Super Nintendo game. Um, it has a fairly robust story mode, but it also has a multiplayer mode, and it's like mech combat and all the rest of that. A lot of people enjoyed it just from renting it way back in the 90s. But as it turns out, there's actually I wouldn't say large, but there's a fairly active scene in Brazil and a few other South American countries for playing that game competitively. And over the course of that, they built up a number of tricks. They noticed weird things because they're playing it all the time in multiplayer mode. And they put out some videos showing all these different glitches that you can do with the different robots, how things gonna get uh, messed up. And I can reference a lot of those for the runs in the actual main storyline. And that helped a bunch. I actually was in contact with a few of them to try and clarify, well, what the heck is it that we're going on here? Is this something that's real, or is it just part of the emulator that they're using, kind of squaring all that away? But yeah, you can find all sorts of information in places that you wouldn't typically expect.
hmm. Yeah, there's definitely plenty of examples out there of someone discovers some new glitch and then you realize that like 15 years ago on YouTube someone was like, "What the heck is this?" And oh, if you found that earlier, game would have been
There
broken
was
a
a
lot sooner.
there was another instance in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Turtles in Time. Um, some ancient, like 2000 year 2000 post on game FAQs was complaining about, hey, I did this thing in one stage and then suddenly it transported me to the like 4 levels on, or something like that. And those kinds of activities, yeah, a lot of times it's going to be, well, maybe you're playing with a weird code, or just your emulator wasn't very good or whatever, and they get dismissed, but you can still dig them up. And as it turns out, that exact scenario actually was an in-game glitch that occurred when, under certain circumstances with 2 players enabled, you would basically just end the stage and jump forward several stages because of, well, weird things coded in the game. But that was discovered actually by, I guess, a Swedish Let's Player again later on, and it was immediately noted by the relatively few people who were running it at the time. But investigated it. Some taskers checked it out, uh, figured out the exact mechanism, came up with a setup, and suddenly that entire run is like 2 to 3 minutes faster. So those kinds of notices, don't discount them. A lot of times they might actually be something valid, something helpful. And yeah, there's a similar uh, one that hasn't been discovered in Suikoden 2, where just visiting a certain screen early on with maybe some corrupted data suddenly jumps you to the ending credits roll. And there were 2 or 3 reports of this happening way earlier, and I dug in and found the mechanism that might cause that. But outside of some save corruption or otherwise, there's currently no known way to actually just make it happen. So still, it points out that there are situation scenarios that you can look into, and just based on kind of errant reports from different players all over, and they turn into something really significant, or at the very least put something as a target for speedrunners to really dig into. It might significantly change up their runs.
Hmm. Investigation is always important, and it can be overlooked sometimes. So it's just cool that these stories exist because it's just
Oh yeah.
further proof. Um, Something I wanted to touch on when you talk about SDA, like I obviously haven't needed to check the site very much in more recent years, especially with my runs
Mhm.
being so heavily documented. And I joined in like 2017, where SRC was already flourishing. But what I've seen is obviously there's usually the run and then the comments, but I either forgot or just didn't know about the second audio track. At least nothing
Mhm.
I've ever seen there had it. Which is interesting because obviously the way that was done back then was you would send in like your videotape and they would, put it on the internet for you. So how did they handle the commentary back then?
That was super early on. So by the time they had reached the 2010s, it had modernized a little bit, and you could
Okay.
encode it yourself and send it in yourself. But they did still offer that service because there were, before capture equipment was more readily available, people would use what they had, which was VCRs. In
Mm-hmm.
some cases, actually DVD players, DVD recorders, and that was part of the service. Is that once you had the run, you could at least mark out like, oh, it's this section of the tape or whatever. You'd send it in, and they would encode it for you into fairly reasonable quality, judging from whatever the source might have been, and put it online. And in those cases, you probably didn't have a secondary audio track. But if you were encoding it yourself, you could actually provide that second audio track. And they actually did have some encoding software that was built by administrators on SDA that would help to make sure that whatever you're putting it into turns out into a reasonable format. You could add the audio track as part of that process. There's a bunch of things that you could do as part of that submission process, and even some of them have 2 or 3 audio tracks because I know certainly myself and some of the other speedrunners that I typically coordinated with, we would do like, here's the run with the game audio, here's the run with my actual technical commentary, and then here's a run of us after a few drinks, and we're just saying, oh, what is that ridiculous thing, and getting into all other kind of antics. So there's all sorts of different ways that it kind of pops up. But yeah, dig through. There's actually a lot of them do have secondary audio, and when there's a lot of history to some of these things too. It used to be that every SDA video also went up on YouTube, and then the person who was in charge of and had all of the access to YouTube just kind of disappeared, and they were never able to reclaim it from him. But when that was active, they would typically actually upload 2 versions to YouTube if you had multiple commentary, the default one and then the with commentary. And you can see that in a few of them. I believe I have one for the firemen with myself and Mr. K, um, just basically role playing as the characters as they're getting knocked around by fire and all sorts of other wacky things going on. Yeah, we could do whatever we want. It was earlier days in the internet, and you didn't care as much on some of those aspects, but it was all fun at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just interesting because I haven't really heard about that. I guess I didn't put together that that's a more modern thing. Like SDA was around for a while, so
Hmm.
maybe at least modern in SDA terms, but
Yeah,
it was
the
still.
if I had to put a just a some eras to it. You have early SDA, which was probably 2007 and earlier. You had kind of modernized SDA, which covered from 2000, let's say 2008 until about 2012, and then you started to have the great split out, the branching into, all right, people are going to go to SRL, and speedrun.com came up in, I don't remember an exact year, but let's say that it started to become more popular in 2015, something like that. Um, just different folks needed different kinds of support for the way that they exercised their runs and what they wanted to get out of their experience. And well, they found it or they made it themselves along the way. And just as part of the modernization, it modernized enough just to be able to accept new submissions and so on. But speedrunning grew faster than the processes did at SDA, and ultimately that's kind of where it started to fall off. Um, but still, it's there as a valuable source of history. Definitely a lot of the older threads. Um, they might not have the most up-to-date info, but it's a lot of just how it came about, because that was the main way that you communicated. I had dozen threads or so of just, hey, I'm going to speedrun this game, and I check in periodically and say, hey, I discovered a new thing, or I figured out all the health values of these different bosses, and you plop it in there, and it's basically your way to kind of update people on what's going on. And eventually they would look forward to it as like, oh, cool, yeah, we're gonna either watch you stream, or we can't wait for it to show up on the front page. Different experiences for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah, I'm super interested in the more earlier histories because, if you weren't there, like you have no idea what it was truly like, so you can only get either firsthand experiences or kind of browse through yourself and try to get the feels of how it was. But if you weren't there, you can never truly know. So just learning the information, at least to me, is very interesting because again, I showed up in 2017 and that was all long gone by then. The
For
passage
sure.
of time.
Hmm.
But yeah, unless you wanted to dive into more specifics on early games you ran, you can continue on however you'd like.
Yeah, let's I'll just talk about some of my own highlights, I guess,
Okay.
is because I can talk about any of the weird obscure games that I've run and cool things that I've discovered along the way or where they've come, and the kind of micro competitions I've had with a few other players trying to compete at that top end. For me, I guess there's a few games that stick out the most as just these were kind of my forever projects, or like my real time understanding my own process, how to accomplish that. And I've said it a few times already in this call, but Suikoden 2 was, I worked on that game for essentially 10 years, on and off, of course. But when you have a 6 hour RPG that just has so many kind of intricate details of, if you do one thing different in the first hour, it actually significantly impacts what your options are in hours 3, 4, and 5. Understanding like the ripple effects of, I do one thing slightly different here, how is that going to affect everything else along the way, as well as gradually just understanding more of the systems. And even um, a handful of years ago, 3, 4 years, yeah, it was in the middle of COVID, I believe, still working on it. Um, just used my skills to help reverse engineer some more of the systems, and we discovered even more things, minor details that really add up to helping to increase consistency, helping to identify what are some of the best options at these different stages, how to get around some of the limitations to properly exploit some of these glitches that were kind of vital to the overall planning. It was a blast. I have huge numbers of spreadsheets that go into exploring all of those different aspects. But for me, it was just always going back and trying to solve and figure out that puzzle. Um, and when I could, doing the runs myself. But just, yeah, 6 hours. 6 hours is tough anytime. But trying to do that as my own work and family life picked up became kind of an impossibility. So that was one of the games where my contribution to the overall state of things, even as it is now, is probably less apparent than my current standings as far as runs performed or just my overall time. I helped to develop, I would call it the modern route, And I personally have never actually performed that route. I just basically said that based on all the things that we know, here's what should be some of the optimal decisions and some of the ways to maintain overall safety of the run. And at that point in my life, I really would like to have done more opportunities to get that in, at least get one run that satisfies here's a route that I significantly contributed to and kind of at least feel it myself. And it just never ended up happening. The opportunity is still there, but it's difficult for me to string together 1 hour to play a video game now, let alone several.
Hmm.
So we'll see. We'll see where that comes from.
Yeah, all my games are
Um,
like less than 30 minutes. So yeah, the longer you
that's
go,
kind of the
it's
sweet spot.
harder to dedicate.
I
Yeah, it's harder
personally
to
feel with,
dedicate more time.
yeah,
Like this is a
the
speed run.
30
What do you mean
minutes
6 hours?
RPG folks are built a bit differently for speedruns, is one thing I'll say.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely worth it if you have an RPG game that you're a fan of to just sit down and try it. Whether it means going through learning the actual speedrun route yourself or figuring out how what might accomplish it, you will stretch mental muscles you didn't know you have over the course of trying to understand it and pick it up. But it is definitely a very different flavor from something like Mario. Just the twitch reflexes and the core memorization of a moment to moment sequence, but it plays out very differently when you also have to contend with menuing, on the fly adjustments to randomization, trying to actually build in some amount of resourcefulness for when things go wrong. Like there's a huge number of things that when the stakes are much lower, like you're within that 20 to 30 minute range, um, you just reset and it's fine, and you chase it again another time. But when you're 2 hours in, you have to roll with the punches and figure it out because that's the only time you're going to get through there today. You might as well make the most of it.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what's cool about speedrunning. Those there's so many genres of games, and they all require different skill sets, and you can kind of find what interests you, but also see what other genres interest other people and watch them do their thing. There's always something
Mhm.
new to check out. If you don't have
Yeah,
the time, watch
absolutely.
someone that does. I don't know.
Well, Twitch is certainly helpful for that,
Oh
and
yeah.
that's another thing that was a kind of a shifter in the entire community across speedrunning overall, is just the more readily available set of platforms that you could actually stream your video on live. And that was back to SDA for a moment. They actually, one of the most used features for me was actually a collection of, there were 3 or 4 different platforms at the time that all did different video streaming. And what you could do is submit your URL basically, and they had a program that would look around for everybody who was streaming across any of them, and you could see them all in one place. And you could see, oh, there's 20 different speedrunners going right now, or there's 5. And just across that set, you could just find somebody, anybody. And I actually found a variety of folks who became some of my best friends in the community as part of that process through their showcases in that little collection. Clearly, it changed up quite a bit just as streaming overall became more popular and more centralized. Realistically, a lot of those other platforms died out or changed their focus away from gaming or just however they might have done it. And uh, yeah, the early novelty of it led to kind of a tighter knit feeling of just it didn't matter that you were of very different games, is that you had other folks who were feeling the same things that you were across their own different games, and you could participate, you could offer your own advices, perspectives, things like that, just with the folks in that kind of small collection. And yeah, we're certainly much too big for that now, or at least the discovery pattern is different. But yeah, having it much more centralized at the time helped to further me in my own understanding of what it is that we were doing.
Hmm. And I know SRL kind of took over that. I think that was only Twitch. Like it had to be streaming on Twitch to show up there, but that became more the central hub for discovery, I guess. And I know
Mhm.
Twitch used to have like a speed run They I forget what they called it, but they used to, I guess, categories.
Category tag, some
Yeah.
it's gone through a lot of different iterations. Discovery is, well,
A little more difficult now because it's so large, but
it's modern sensibilities of these companies. It's honestly less about discovery and curating and just making sure that they can get you to the place that will most likely make you spend some more. But
mhm.
that's an entire other business conversation.
Yes.
Overall, yeah, probably less easy to find a variety of folks, and instead, you're more often just going to find them within your own community, their discords, wherever it is that they typically post their information in times, and that's already your tight knit community.
Mhm. It is interesting that Twitch and speedrunning really grew up together because they really helped each other out in the early years to grow both sides of things. And now they're just so almost disconnected because of just how big both have gotten in their own respective ways. Just interesting.
Certainly is a part of it, and we'll see.
Yeah.
Times are always changing, and
Oh yeah.
um, I expect that technology overall is still going to play some catch up before too long. Business principles and other things are going to come in and make everybody adapt to another different way to handle it all. But that's a different kind of conversation.
Yeah. Well, you can continue on the timeline, I guess. Kind of forgot
Continue on the timeline. Let
where
me
we were,
even
but
check up. So I guess let me take it in a different direction. My professional background is in well, a variety of computer engineering and cybersecurity work and things like that. Um, Part of the reason that I'm able to actually cover all the bases when I pick up a new game is that I do have formal training in software reverse engineering and just engineering practice. So not only am I able to quickly infer how they probably did something, figure out how to actually identify truthfully what's going on in code, and get back to maybe core formulas, the way that different things are implemented. Um, it's just that knowing that developers are under a variety of constraints, trying to do things quickly on whatever amount of budget that they actually have available. So inevitably, there's going to be corners cut. There's going to be different aspects that they're going to most likely try to adapt or reuse elsewhere. And a lot of that helps me to document the games that I'm working on. Um, in particular, let's see. Uh, in more recent years, I worked on Rune Factory 4. It was originally on DS. It eventually came out on Switch and then Steam, and basically you can get it anywhere you want now. But that's a classic farming sim plus combat game. And one of my biggest contributions was not necessarily to a speedrun community there, but just over the course of to plan out the run, I needed to know as much as I could about all of the items, all of the data, all of the different monster parameters, how all that worked together. And so my easiest course of action was to dig in and start seeing what I could find. And actually, within the game's files, they had a variety of databases that were not encrypted. They were kind of available so long as they were easy to parse. And I just performed that parsing because that's the information that I needed. But as a result of that, I basically had here's everything in the game. Here's all of the different parameters that it offers. Here's how all the items and monsters and even the other villagers that you're trying to romance or whatever else is going on. I had all that now, and yeah, I could use a lot of it, and I did, as far as planning out what is the optimal way forward, what is the optimal thing for that. But this was also just uh, something that the players of that game broadly had been doing just through general experimentation, trying to pick up the best information that they could from maybe some Japanese translated guidebooks, some other places, but just all of that information spread out, a lot of it not accurate, a lot of it anecdotal, and I basically released that information to them as the Rune Factory 4 data mining compendium. And across that community, that's still basically referenced for anybody who wants to dig into, well, how does this game work? here you go. This is exactly how it works. Here's what this item will do. Here's what that item will do. And to this day, it's still kind of the key piece of information for anybody planning and trying to figure out, well, what is the best build that I can get under these circumstances? What is the best way to deliver damage? What are some of the best spells that are available? I've got that all available, and I'm happy to have provided them like that information. For me personally, yeah, it was just something that I wanted to help me do a better run. But along the way, this is the game. Other people need to know it. Other people want to know it. Here, I'll provide it to the best of my ability, and I'm just glad that it does have that lasting use beyond uh, me simply trying to perform a more optimal run.
Hmm. Yeah, it's nice when it's useful to not just speedrunners, but the collective community behind a certain game, because then
Mhm.
everyone benefits. And there are a lot of people that play a lot of games, so
Mhm.
always
There's
useful.
a handful of other projects that I picked up as, I'll say, exercising my engineering muscles that assisted. Well, you could say assisted, but they were more speedrunning adjacent. Um, I had My background is mostly in kind of embedded electronics, which just means tiny computers that you can put in all sorts of things that can respond to buttons. You can hook them up however the heck you want. And I built a basically a mashing tester, and I brought it to a variety of GDQ events. I'd set it up with a projector and like invite people over to come and test their mashing ability, and it would expose, here's your performance over time. Here's like what rate you can kind of get to. Here's some ways that you might be able to improve it. You could plug in a Super Nintendo controller, you could plug in a Genesis controller, you could plug in a regular Nintendo controller. Basically, I had support for all those things, and that was just a lot of fun to not only project that out, make it. This was something called Mash Attack, and you probably still can find older videos of people trying it out at GDQs. Just the organization of it, and something that I can be proud of is just, here's something that I was curious about. I wanted to see where it landed, get the data from what other people were capable of, and hopefully also help to other people to improve their own mashing abilities, because whether we like it or not, especially in older games, mashing is somewhat of a requirement.
Hmm.
Being able to do different games well, and it's not simply a matter of, well, you're naturally a better masher. It's that, well, maybe your form isn't the best, and you can just adjust some of your hand positioning. You can get better comfort out of it. You can get better consistency over whatever period of time. Being able to investigate all of that. There's a couple other like bespoke projects that I built up. They're much more commonplace now, but you have these input viewers that act as an interposer between your controller and the game, and they basically log the inputs to your computer, and you can display them live while streaming. A lot of people have that now. Previously, in like early 2010s, not the case. That was like very specialized hardware. I thankfully had enough skills to be able to build one up, and not only that, I built an interface for it that kind of um, it looks like a reverse DDR. Essentially, is that for whatever duration you're pressing, you see strings coming down, so you could kind of follow along with, here's the diversity of inputs, how long they're pressing something, how long they're not. It was all for fun, but one of the significant aspects of that is that I was trying to capture it with enough fidelity that you could actually play back that sequence and it would mostly operate in the same way. Um, it's not to the same level of like TaskBot, but being able to actually have a reference of, here's the inputs that went into making this particular run, and being able to kind of play it back and see, here's the different pieces that happen. You can actually play back in an emulator too. Wasn't perfect. There were going to be desyncs. Just the technology wasn't that up to par. But um, some really neat opportunities that came up from it.
Hmm.
Um, and let's see, yeah, a variety of other tools. I mentioned Suikoden 2 so many times already. I made like a experience calculator that was able to track what kind of experience needs you had all the way through the game with different scenarios and all sorts of things like that. How probabilistically your stats would turn out, and what kind of expectation you'd have if a character was X level, whether they'd meet a particular stat threshold. I had a lot of fun with Monster Rancher on PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. It had a unique system where you basically take out the game disc and put in any arbitrary disc that you had, and it would generate a monster from that. And a lot of times people kind of considered it black magic, but as a kid, you'd go through and just literally grab every CD you had, put it in, see what pops out. For speedrun purposes, you'd want to know, okay, what is the best monster I can get for like this given category? And I spent some time, reverse engineered that process, figured out not only here's the exact data from the disk that it's using, but what would that data give you if you were trying to generate a monster from it? And finally, given what you want, I actually created a way to make a disk image. So from just you dial in the data, it gives you a gel of a certain type and a subtype and these stat seeds. And then you just press go and there it goes. Spits out a disk image. You could burn it, put it in, and there you go. You could suddenly play with that particular monster. And just all sorts of things kind of delight me in being able to assist other communities. I never ran Monster Rancher, for example, but I watched people who did. I interacted with them regularly through various other RPG chats and watching them stream their runs. And just this was something that I thought I could engage in, have some fun, figure out, help other people out along the way. And yeah, plenty of that came through. One last hardware project that I worked on is a few times at GDQ's. Zallard 1 performed single input multi console runs. So for Mike Tyson's Punch Out and Super Punch Out, for example, he was operating it with just one controller, both games at the same time. And that's not a trivial thing to set up, but I built the hardware that basically acted as that interposer, and it would duplicate the correct inputs between the two consoles just based on your one button press, and you could play both games that way. Very niche opportunity, but clearly something that still helped to entertain people. And I'm again happy to have engaged in that particular project. It helped me to figure out what's actually going on, as well as to build up my own skills in producing something that was consistent. Because we had issues actually with the device that I used, because it worked every time in practice. And so, like when I'm testing at my home environment, never failed. It was great. Bring it to a GDQ, immediately all sorts of problems happening. And part of the reason is that when you're working with electronics on that scale, they will become sensitive in different scenarios. And suddenly, when you're in a room with 100 different CRTs, all firing and doing whatever else, clearly there's going to be a bit more interference. And figuring out some ways to help it in those scenarios, just like a day before the run, was kind of its own challenge, but they all went off in the actual run without a hitch. And yeah, you figure out these things as you go.
I know you made a lot of different programs and software and everything. I guess I didn't realize to the scale. You've done a lot.
It's all fun for me, and like looking back on it now, it all feels kind of so far away. But yeah, there's different needs and different communities for all sorts of different things, and I get my kicks out of seeing that game, that community be able to move further if I can produce something that helps to unblock them in some way. And
Mhm.
that's usually how I've chased it.
Did Was it you that also did the Tyson Finder?
I built this is a spreadsheet tool that estimates what your Mike Tyson time is to the decimal based on you basically put in some data on the based on the video feed. It's not perfect because unfortunately video isn't perfect,
Hmm.
but it allows you to at least estimate with a fairly high degree of accuracy what the actual decimal digits of that fight would be, because otherwise the game doesn't display it natively. And yeah, I dug into finding exactly what caused the time to advance, how players might be able to control that, manipulate it, and just what circumstances caused it to be something else.
Hmm. I just know a lot of, especially on the leaderboards now, they can actually use the decimals, and I know they use your program for that specifically. So, because I've heard it mentioned, even to this day.
Yeah,
In
great.
fact, specifically, Summoning Salt, I believe, records his gameplay in a very specific way where it'll be 100% accurate with the Tyson Finder specifically. So,
Yep.
little fun fact of the day. But
Mhm.
um,
Oh, and yeah, all sorts of tools and all sorts of knowledge. And one of the best ways for me to try and pass on that knowledge was to write about it. And part of the problem with writing is that you need people to read it. Um, a lot of it might be documented on SDA as I was building it up, but that's never going to capture like the full context. If it's going to be in some Discord chat, or even earlier, a lot of speedrunners use Skype, and just those chats are long gone.
mhm.
They're not very accessible. They're not very findable,
Isn't Skype
and
dead
even
now? Even I think they were like closing up
I believe they might
s-
have killed the brand completely.
yeah.
I'm not certain on that, but certainly it's not all that used anymore, one way or another.
Oh yeah. No.
Um, but communicating a lot of that information, you want to be able to make sure that people can find it, and something that is searchable, something that can actually be found by folks. One of the issues with Discord in general is still that it's great if you're in that community and people document it and talk about what it is, but it's also a chat feed and it will scroll forever. And if there's something that was really valuable that somebody looked into that was a while back, you might not even know that it's there. You can search through, maybe find something, but just a lot of the times that information will be ephemeral, and you're not going to come across the reasons behind a significant route choice or some bug that somebody found but they didn't think there was a use for, and then it's just gone. Um, it's really, well, getting back to the point of knowledge here is just that all of those things kind of build up into, I have a lot of fun doing the full process. We've established that throughout this entire call.
Mhm.
One of my best opportunities then is to put it out in some way that can't disappear, that can't just be shut down by Google search results, or a website no longer being funded and just disappearing, a forum that people stop using and no longer becomes a reference. And I set out to do that just from what I understood that makes me happy about doing runs, about my own process to addressing how to go from nothing to a fairly polished run in, let's say, a month. Um, and I started to just write that down. And this was, I want to say I started just writing it down in terms of kind of short articles in 2016. I basically make it a file and keep it to myself. But the point was I was going to put it up in SDA, or I was going to put it somewhere else, and that it would become public accessible after that point. Um, but I kept writing, and I kept seeing like an opportunity to share something outside of the regular internet operation. And I found, just through my own experiences with speedrunning, a variety of folks who worked as um, well, this was through GDQ. We had a variety of consistent sponsors, and among them was Fangamer. And Fangamer, between just general merch, they also had book lines that they supported. So I approached them about, well, hey, I've got these kind of credentials, I've got these kind of writing um, abilities, and I want to turn this into a book. Can you help me out with all the other things that I don't know, like page layouts, distribution, illustrations, things like that? And we came to a fair agreement on how that would structure. And then for the next 2-3 years, I would write, I'd have it edited, we'd plan out, I worked with one of my friends, Carrie Fry, who also supported Fangamer in a variety of ways. She helped with illustrations, and at the end of the day, several years worth of work that turned into a book, and that became Speedrun Science, and launched in 2019. So I have one of the only speedrunning physical media uh, documents available. It's Folks can still get it from Fangamer. I believe it's one among their most consistent selling books across the site, and that was just a is a big win for me to
Mhm.
be able to share some of that knowledge. And right now it's 6 years old. I believe we launched in, I want to say, April of 2019. So it's not new, but a lot of the processes, a lot of the opportunities that exist, a lot of the just thinking about why do people even bother speedrunning? What's in it for them? How does it become a hobby? Is something that I try to talk about and address all the way through, and all that's still relevant.
Mhm.
And I think people recognize that, and they they still pick it up. There's digital versions now too, so another capstone of some of my experiences.
Yeah, and I actually have my copy right here, in fact.
Ooh,
In
fancy! Thank
preparation
you
for
for your
this, I
support.
actually read the whole thing.
Oh,
So,
fantastic!
there we go. And I doubt you'll remember this, but I picked up this around the time it came out, I think. I believe this, I don't know if you've gone through any editions, but this one says first edition, April 2019. So,
Oh,
I
yeah,
did
that is the
pick
first edition.
I picked it up early, but I don't know if you remember this, but I was at HDQ 2020. I actually remembered to bring it. So,
Hmm.
I have your signature right here.
Fantastic.
So,
Yep, my tagline and my terrible handwriting, but all the same.
yep. But yeah, it's very interesting. I'm very into the history of stuff, so obviously my favorite chapter was the history of everything. But I've been going through kind of a burnout period myself in terms of speedrunning, so I think I'm gonna try to use a lot of the information you provided in the execution chapters, like especially dealing with burnout uh in uh was it the run, I guess.
Being able to tackle your own frustration or
Yes,
just get back to what's fun for you.
I've
Yeah.
certainly dealt with plenty of frustrations, and I'm sure that hasn't helped overall. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna since I'm again this burnout period's been pretty long. I'm gonna try to come back and I'll try to actually implement some of the stuff I learned in there and see if it actually helps me. So
Great.
yeah,
And follow some of the other stuff too. Go pick
yes,
up another game just for the heck of it and try to run it yourself.
we'll see about that, but yeah, plenty of good information there. I can recommend it. I have read the whole thing. I can support good content. So there you go.
Great.
But
Thank you so much.
yeah, no problem. Got
That
gotta gotta
that book
promote.
itself that book itself led to a variety of other things too. Um,
Oh yeah.
Most notably was probably the whole Dragster saga.
Ah
So,
yes. Well, we definitely have to go into that.
do we really have to though?
Oh well, I mean,
No, it's all good. That's par for the course. But for the folks who aren't familiar, Dragster is an Atari 2600 game. Came out in 1970, I believe.
really?
Yeah, 1969 or 1970, right? No, 1980. Yep,
Okay, I
there we
was gonna
go.
say that's. I didn't even think the Atari 2600 was out yet.
It all runs together. I wasn't born yet, so it doesn't matter to me.
Fair.
But um, so Atari 2600 game, it's very straightforward, operates basically on one button. Well, I guess two if you want to count the braking, but all that it is a dragster course, and you're kind of going along this simulated dragster course, and you have a very sensitive vehicle. Your goal is to optimize basically accelerating your engine without either blowing it up from having it redline for too long or just, well, not performing well. So it's kind of, in a way, a perfect speedrunning game. It slaps a timer on there. Your entire purpose is make this car get from A to B in as short a time as possible. And for a long, long time, it was believed that the fastest time that you could perform this in was 5 seconds and 51 milliseconds. And that kind of wasn't questioned. It was from a fairly famous gamer, um, went by Todd Rogers, and he had a variety of other accolades across gaming, and just nobody really expected anything different from that. It's just,
And
well, he had some special technique that the devs didn't expect, and through that, he was able to exceed their own estimated top time,
and
and
this is an
that's like
Activision game, right? Sorry to
it is
interrupt,
an
but
Activision game. Yep.
because I think they Activision specifically like said, yeah, this is real or something, from way back when. So
Yeah,
another reason why
and
it might have not been questioned.
if you dig into it, Todd actually had a relationship with Activision, so they would
Oh,
invite him
okay.
to trade shows, and he'd kind of perform in front of other people and so on. So it was a known commodity of at least they had a relationship.
I see.
Um, but yeah, it basically made like the perfect speedrunner story. And as I'm writing out my book and wanting to document some aspects of the history, like part of that question is, well, when was the first speedrun? And okay, here I can point to something like this, and it kind of checks all the boxes. Developers don't expect it, has a time, has some optimization, and people achieving perfect scores. Great. I can write about that and use it as something else to launch in. But across all of the different accounts of how it was performed, there is some like information that wasn't clear, and some discussion of, oh, he started in second gear, which the developers never expected, so that let him perform it in a way that really kind of ran counter to how any normal player would actually operate that game. All sorts of different aspects like that. And it's like, well, okay, but what exactly is going on here so I can describe it correctly in my book? And across all of those different descriptions, there wasn't anything that really nailed down the technical nature of it. Well, okay, knowing my background and the fact that the entire game is on 2 kilobytes of ROM space, like this shouldn't be too hard to actually figure out and reverse engineer. So I went in and basically turned the entire dragster speed, position, acceleration function into a spreadsheet. And using that, basically started to go through and toy with different strategies, different opportunities to fine tune your performance as you're going through. And yeah, 5.51 was not happening through at least that spreadsheet. The best that I was able to accomplish was something like 5.57. And that used some very precise inputs at very specific times and knowing some other aspects that were actually random prior to you even starting out a given session. So I basically took that research and made it public. I went out to Reddit and like, okay, hey guys, there's this history behind this game. I tried to investigate it, and this is the best I could come up with. Here's a spreadsheet you can go try out on Google Sheets and tinker around with it, find something, and help me to see how it might be possible to hit this 551. And sure enough, people took that in. They investigated. They did their own playing around, and there wasn't anything that could be done. uh, like the following the rules of the game, and this covers not just like the written stated rules, but the actual literal rules of you can press these inputs and expect this kind of response. 551 wasn't happening. Okay, so all right, fine. Then we basically say, in that case, using the best knowledge that we have right now, that 551 may have been an error or may have been a typo that just persisted or something like that. We can't really count on it because the best known way to do any kind of performance in this ends out at 557. Okay, fine, cool. We'll call it there and I'll move on. Then it gets raised with Twin Galaxies at some point, who are the record keepers for a variety of things, and Todd was intrinsically involved with a lot of their pieces. And um, then continues on, I forget exactly how much, 6 months to a year of just solid internet arguing. And I was brought in to kind of defend my own research and saying, well, no, this is what it means. This isn't what I'm saying. Your suppositions about what's actually going on or what might be possible don't apply because XYZ. And yeah, that turned into a whole long thing where Todd became involved again, but granted, not directly. He would only speak through an administrator in TG and submitted some more evidence, which ended up being JPEGs that he had basically personal um, ownership of, that said, hey, we recognize that so and so had this amount of time. And as it turned out, he was basically doctoring those images himself. And it became a whole thing. End of the day, after all that long discussion and so on, it basically was just settled that, all right, yes, this is the fastest time that can be achieved in the game, and those prior records are invalidated. And that was that. Um, along the way. Not only was I kind of a key contributor, knowing here's what's possible in the system, here's why works and this doesn't, here's what a human would reasonably be able to do. I also became the first person to have a video evidence documented completion of that fastest possible time, 5.57, and I certainly less so now than during that heyday, but it became a target for speedrunners of any type to go in, and they would get as close as they could to that 557 using any of the documentation, any of the video stuff that I had to help to support them in here's a way to practice this very, very short run. Um, Try your own steps at accomplishing it and getting the most out of it. And a variety of folks after that picked it up on real console, tried it with different modes, and it became a whole thing. But
Mhm.
still, my name is up there. It's just being the first to accomplish it, and at least as far as I've tested myself, one of the most optimized by other metrics that are deep within the game and really don't matter because they don't affect the end time. But that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of frustration. Um, I'm glad to be on the other side of it now, and it makes for interesting stories to go back to. But yeah,
Mhm.
that's Dragster, and I still get pinged every so often of different anniversaries or this new thing happened related to Dragster. But yeah, certainly, at least to this day, nothing faster than the time that I had uh, surmised as being the fastest has come through. So it's still there, even on test videos. My I have a completed run on task videos that basically just shows through going through that game with um, optimal inputs.
Mhm. It's interesting to learn the history. Like obviously I hear a lot of people try to tell the story, but I didn't know, like, I don't know if it's out there that you only looked into it because of the book you were writing. That's very fascinating. And then
Hmm.
it's personally interesting to me because I discovered speedrunning in August of 2017. You can see where the timeline kind of lines up here.
Hmm.
That was right into like the start of the whole dragster era for everyone, and obviously I found speedrunning mostly through Mario 1. Specifically the Summoning Salt video was the first thing. So Darbian was the first person I followed on Twitch, and obviously he would go on to really grind dragster to get the first one on like original hardware or whatever. But so
Oh yeah.
I joined in on what exactly happened to be the dragster era. So I have like
Hmm.
that personal interest and I guess nostalgia for it. So it's cool to get all the information from the source, I guess, because it's a
Gosh,
very interesting story. Everything that developed from it.
it's yeah. There's lots of other minor details that came along the way that were less fun, but
Sure.
a lot of it is just people have their idols and they will defend them to the death no matter the evidence, and
Oh
that
yeah.
led into other aspects. Even even today, we hear every so often about a new Billy Mitchell thing or another, and as it happens, Billy and Todd were actually close friends and supported each other in a variety of ways. But I'm not going to go into
Yes. Let's.
that can of worms.
Yeah. This is not the place for that. But no, the actual just history of all that development is very fascinating. And
Hmm.
you probably don't know this, but there was so at GDQ there was always like the Pringle TV where
Hmm.
you play Pringles on the Genesis and people just do that. At this past one, AGDQ 2025, there was a dedicated Dragster TV
Oh boy,
with and it was all set up on original hardware too, I believe.
right?
Um, I actually was able to get so in like 2018 on one of the emulators, I think I got a 567, so
Hmm.
point 0.1 off. But randomly, whatever how many years later this is, I pulled off a 564. I can't submit
There you
it
go.
because I didn't record it, but two decimals
It,
or two increments off, I guess. So
yeah, it's all about that improvement.
yeah, after 7 years or whatever, I finally got
Hmm.
an increment improvement just randomly in the practice room. On original hardware too. I believe it was all original. So there you go.
Well, you can count it. That's I believe you.
I counted in my. I mean, I have a picture. It's just not enough to
Uh-huh.
submit to the leaderboards, but
Uh, those leaderboards are fairly chock full as it is.
yes, there's a lot. Actually, just for my personal interest, I want to see if oh, yep, I still have the picture there. No one can doubt this 564.
Hmm.
There we go. Easy.
Aha. Nailed it. Of course, on the lower screen too.
Yes. That is how they had it set up. So very important, but yes,
Hmm.
the dragster era, very fascinating history, at least to me. So it's nice to
Yep.
hear how that all went without having to get into the more dramatic stuff that came from it.
Yeah.
But
But that was kind of like my 15 minutes of fame, I suppose. It's not something I was really chasing, but it's how everything worked out. And from that, well, of course, my book, realistically, this was one of the things I was also accused of, like, oh, I'm digging into this so much so I can help sell more copies of my book. Uh, in the book itself, there's maybe one sidebar paragraph kind
yeah,
of talking about this, and that's
there's
it.
no history
So,
about it. It's
uh,
more, yeah.
yeah,
I
just a
remember
lot of that.
reading it. It was just like a small one-off, maybe paragraph of information.
Mhm,
And other than that, you just have the screenshot of your pop off in the preface or whatever. But
of
yeah,
course.
there's
Yeah.
not. It's not at all like a selling point of the book or anything. So.
Mhm. And but it did lead to some interesting opportunities for me to, well, the book and my overall just profile at the time actually got me invited. I gave a talk at the Google campus in Boston, and this was
Oh.
something broadcast to all the other Google offices. They basically invite different, uh, I guess you could call them thought leaders in different professions. And I was invited on to give a talk on speedrunning, and that's still
Hmm.
available on YouTube. You can check that out on your own time. But that was a fun exercise for me to just be able to represent speedrunning overall, why it's interesting, uh, why it's helpful, and just why people even pursue it as a pastime. And you can think of that as a short summary of the book.
Hmm. Yep. Well, I know that's the major. Pointed out all the like major things you've done, I suppose, but um, I know there's a lot of games we haven't maybe dove into or general history of the actual, run execution.
Hmm.
Obviously, you've done a lot of stuff outside of just run execution, but I feel like that's
Yeah,
also important to the personal journey through speedrunning. So,
it really is. And I mentioned before that just my own life has become busier.
hmm.
And honestly, just between some of the work that I'm doing and my family, I honestly don't have time right now to play games at all, let alone for speedrunning.
Hmm.
And it does hurt me. It does hurt me a bit. But I got to know where my priorities are. I've still got a stack of all the stuff that I want to play, as well as a small number of speedrunning projects I want to continue with. Um, just got to find that right balance again, and I'm sure it'll come up once my kids are a little older, and I'll be able to share it with them in a different way. But yeah, in terms of the projects that I've been working on most recently, and most recently in this case is honestly a year ago, I had been working on a new category of run for a Super Nintendo game called The Fireman, where it would basically go through and accomplish everything there was to do in the game. This means putting out all the fires, putting out all of the, um, saving all of the people, as well as preserving your own hits. And that, up until I started to investigate it, the game actually has an achievement for doing that. That, as far as I'm aware, nobody has ever actually accomplished. Is just during the credits roll, it plays a particular message based on your performance. And I did some reverse engineering to kind of find, well, what are all of the different conditions, the different messages it might display, and I found some of them. And one of them was, you are, what is it? you are legend player or something like that. And the exact conditions to get that, you need to go through. You need to have 100% fire rate on every stage, 100% rescue rate, use no continues, and I believe no, you could be hit, but you couldn't use any continues. There was a different category for not taking a hit also, and to my knowledge, still nobody has ever achieved that. So I started to work out a way to speedrun it, and I got most of the way through, and then things threw me for a loop. Beyond that, there was also improvements to Metal Warriors, which I mentioned earlier, that mech combat game. I had gotten it close to where I wanted it, but I still need to shave off another 15 seconds or so. And that was really exciting. And then after that, I started working on a game called Metal Walker, completely distinct from Metal Warriors. But Metal Walker was a Game Boy game, Game Boy Color, actually could be played on Game Boy Color and had bonus stuff for that. That was like a, you can almost think of it like a Beyblade RPG of sorts, where you launch your people around, they bounce into things, and that's how you do damage to them. So it's perfect up my alley, something nobody's ever heard of that has weird mechanics that I can dig into and come up with all sorts of stuff. And I plotted out an entire run for that. I have a couple of proof of concept tasks actually on my YouTube, and really dug into that. And I never performed a run, and I'd really like to try at some point, but just the time isn't there, and I need to go back and polish that off. But at least I was able to document it as much as I could up to that point.
Mm-hmm. Well, the good thing about speedrunning is I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, so always available to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, are there any other games that you didn't, the highlights that you haven't dove into yet that you'd like to? Because I know there's quite a bit there, but
I'm just going to rattle off a variety that I've worked on in various capacities. Most of them Super Nintendo, but they do cover a variety of different eras, different consoles. SWAT Cats, Dragster, of course, Metal Warriors. I did. There's a freeware older Flash PC game called Genitos that I worked on. It was actually a shmup, and that was a lot of fun. Time Cop was a comedy classic at a variety of GDQs. The Fireman, Skyblazer was kind of my first and one of my most optimized runs. I believe I'm second place now, but by 2 seconds, so it's not exactly a lot of headroom there. Radical Rex, Kendo Rage was a lot of fun. Rune Factory 4, which I mentioned with the whole data mining piece. Sylvan was a Game Gear game, a Sega first party title that was like a, you could think of it similar to Zelda. That was a bunch of fun. Rive was an indie title in the mid 2010s. Twin stick Metroidvania collectible shooter game. Really hard to describe it. Heck of a lot of fun to play through, and I still have probably most of the leaderboard times for each of the stages. Um, Majuo, or King of Demons, was a Super Nintendo classic. Well, not classic. It was actually a pretty rare game, Japan only, and a variety of other things. But I got the good and bad endings in that title routed out and did runs of those. Brutal, Paws of Fury, Hagane is a Super Nintendo really rare, expensive title, but I kind of mapped out the entire run for that, and really satisfied with that. Went Zero, Kamikaze Squirrel, Near on 360, Suikoden 2, Congo's Caper, and then I had a hand in at least reverse engineering a variety of other titles that I didn't personally run, but other people did, and it was in the service of helping them out. So yeah,
mm-hmm.
lots of things. And honestly, like I look back on all of that and think of where it helped me to go, not only just the learning that I was able to get from it.
Mm-hmm. And obviously that sounds like a lot of maybe not as popular titles, but obviously that was chosen on purpose. It sounds like.
Yeah, and of those, I would say I'm probably still the only runner in maybe half of them.
Oh, really? Because my next
Yeah.
question was going to be, has any of these games kind of taken off since you kind of
Um,
helped
Near and
push it?
Suikoden 2 probably developed the biggest communities. There's still a variety of Suikoden runners, and especially there was a remaster that was just released, I think earlier in March, And that kind of revitalized it. I still hang out in that Discord, hear about new happenings and so on, but I myself am not actively participating. Nier was another one that, like I said, I put out the information, lay down the foundation, did runs that were good enough for the quality of what was known at the time, and then some other folks came in and they really took it a step further, and I am happy with where they were able to take it. um, I don't think it's a large community per se, but just the fact that there's other people willing to put in the legwork helps it go that much further. And let's see, of the rest of these, let's see, Skyblazer probably has the most other runners, but they are not necessarily active runners. They came in, they tried to do runs. It's a fun game to pick up and really invest yourself into, and see what time you get. Getting the best possible time involves some really difficult tricks, as well as perfect execution and some good RNG on top of it. But it's otherwise just a great mm, overall speedrun game. And yeah, beyond that, Dragster has the most people who've run it just because it's such a short game, anyways. So that's kind of where most of my opportunities go. The rest have very limited number of other players, maybe only two or three at a time. But still, anything that I can do that help my own experience that can help somebody else later down the line, I'm a fan of.
Hmm. And I forget if I've asked like how you choose these games. Obviously, I know kind of the why you'd like to be involved in the whole process of routing and
Mhm.
everything, but um, are these games that have like nostalgia or?
Some of them,
Mhm.
certainly. Um, Fireman and Skyblazer were games that I happened across in much younger years, and I picked Skyblazer just because it was one of those games that I didn't see on SDA that I kind of remembered from my childhood, renting it and having a pretty good time with it. And it's just like, well, okay, I'll pick it up again, see what's cool about it, and really see what I can do with it. Um, for the most part, it's just there has to be kind of that right formula, and I don't know that I can put it into words, but it's just some of these games click. They have that right mix of there's enough options to really make optimizing interesting, where you actually do have choices about are you going to take some trade-offs for time savings now or basically extend it into later? Are you going to make it harder on yourself by not taking some of these other options? Is there um, how much do you know about actually optimizing a particular boss, figuring out their pattern, figuring out how to manipulate them and get the optimal weapons and other things? It's you pick up on it just from playing through, and you know at the end of playing a game casually, it's like that was neat. Is there more that I want to know? And if the answer is yes, well, it's probably a fair speedrun game. There's a variety of games too that I had that feeling, and I tried to look into them and just ultimately decided, nope, the ways that I'd optimize this game are really not what I'm interested in. I can't name any off the top of my head, but I know at least recently, even I had a few of those instances. It's just like I played through. I enjoyed the game for what it is. I know to optimize it would involve some things that I just don't care to do, and I'm not interested in that. So I'll appreciate for what it is, but work on the stuff that I know has reasonable potential.
Got it. And then to dive more into like the marathon runs, especially
Hmm.
GDQ, since you have a pretty big history there. I know you kind of mentioned the start of it, but obviously you've been to many events and have done many runs, and you have seen it grow from 2013 to, well, you started watching what, 2011, but went to the first one in
Hmm.
2013. Just maybe explain the runs you did, or in opinions on how the event grew over time. Any fun stories from live events or anything?
Oh,
Loaded
yeah, we would
question, I
have to
know, but
probably take an entire other call for those.
fair enough.
Um, but most of those games that I just listed, I am fortunate enough to have actually demonstrated almost my entire uh, catalog of speedruns at a GDQ at some point or another. And that's, a wonderful opportunity for me, just because I get to show off, and it also means that I'm at least a likable enough personality to bring back on and kind of talk over these runs that realistically almost none of the audience is going to recognize, and be able to represent speedrunning well that way has been wonderful for me. Um, I think some of the standouts as far as what people remember are probably any of the times I've done Time Cop, just because it is such a humorous game and you can approach it with kind of that comedic or awful games done quick feel. And being able to support, I had an excellent run of Hagane once upon a time that got all of the lucky RNG and only had actually one thing go poorly in the run, that I had to do a backup strat that I've never actually done before or practiced or anything else like that, but it worked. I didn't die, and the run continued and actually became a even on the leaderboard right now would be like a top 5 time at an event. So it's like great. I never need to demonstrate this game again because that was as close as to perfection as you could reasonably expect in a live event scenario. Um, and yeah, I have fond memories of a lot of that. Uh, I recommend actually, folks, if you want kind of the lowdown on how to run any of those games, I try to commentate to them to the best of my ability, which is usually fairly technical. And you can check out those GDQ runs and learn a lot about the game that you never have to experience or play for yourself, but you can appreciate the decision making, the optimization, the different strategy and technical nature of what goes into it.
There's GDQ Bods is a good site for that because you can search by runner name as well, so you can just have your entire history right there and
Mhm.
view to your heart's content. So I can recommend that
Sure.
site. Yeah.
And yeah, my last GDQ run was actually during the COVID years, and I was helping to operate the stream and other things from at the GDQ studio, actually. And so I was one of, if not the only run to be performed from the studio itself.
Hmm.
And that was Metal Warriors, because I had been working on optimizing that most recently. And I actually soft locked in the second to last stage. And that was it. It's the kind of game that there's no recovering. There's no password system, no um, way to jump to that point in progress. So my final run actually didn't finish at all, but I still had a good time being able to showcase the game and what goes into that run. But it's also one of those, oh well, this has never happened before moments,
Hmm.
and I'd say that's kind of par for the course and a perfect way to showcase the game, even though the result isn't what I would have wanted.
Hmm. Of course, that's how things have to end, at least for now. But just funny. Um,
Yep.
and then obviously you've talked about working behind the scenes a bit, and I guess did that for almost a decade. I don't know how much. I don't. It sounds like you haven't done much, especially post COVID, just because.
Not recently since my own life stuff ticked up, but
Hmm.
I helped to plan out all manner of decisions. What kind of monitors are we going to have in the practice room? What is our transition from having just a literal truckloads of CRTs to something more portable, something that we could actually unload and still provide a very consistent experience for players, uh, testing them for their input latency across different scenarios, making sure that our actual stream side capture process could handle a variety of those different and troublesome console types or games. Getting all of that to work out was some of my responsibilities, and was fun for a different variety of reasons. But I built some custom hardware that I believe GDQ still uses for their tally light system, for their actual ingest of a variety of games. Basically, it's a giant PCB that just has some retro chinks slotted into it, and it's meant to help to simplify powering them up, wiring them in, and make it more um, resilient instead of just having them floating around and getting lost in a mess of cables and so on. So that was something I did to help streamline our own setup process, and otherwise just stress testing the heck out of the fact that we still have to work with analog consoles a lot of times. How can we get reliably the best um, video feeds from them while making the setup experience of swapping between different consoles every other run more realistic and quicker.
Mhm.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes and just decisions to be made, trade-offs to take in, recovery and planning for games that we know are going to be weird circumstances or like multiple people or arcade hardware that might be really awkward and bespoke to set up and use. We plan all that, and I was a part of a lot of those decisions and some stressful times, but overall, a long history of successful events. So I can't really complain with where it all ended up.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been getting much more wild and wacky over the years too. So I'm
Sure.
sure the tech people
And
behind the scenes really have their work cut out for them, but they seem to be doing it pretty well. And you can speak
we'll keep up
firsthand
with
how
it
it
the best we
works.
can.
Yeah.
I still help to support the staff, mostly as kind of like an advisory role these days. I haven't been able to travel to events in recent years at all. I hope to attend more in the future, but
Mhm.
just right now it's not feasible for me to head out there. So still, I get to offer them my insight where possible.
That's cool. And then again, because you've seen it grow over time, just how do you feel the direction it's gone in the future of the what they're doing?
Mm. There's a lot of challenges in the space,
Hmm.
and GDQ has always been excellent at providing charity live stream events. That's kind of the bread and butter. But given the frequency of events as well as the variety of content that are put out there now with hotfix, with other side events and things like that, um, it's it still needs to operate like a business and understanding where the revenue is, where like how is GDQ able to continue doing what it does best, figuring out all of the money side of that because it's not purely a volunteer organization anymore is a challenge. And with COVID, with the changing in streaming sites, it's always going to be a changing piece of the equation, as well as just folks grow up. I mean, that's my story too. Is my life priorities changed? That happens across a variety of different staff. So even though some of the folks who've been there for a long, long time are still there, we've also had a lot of staff that just need to change out, do different things. We need to bring in new folks, and kind of the flavor of the event changes subtly as a result of that as well. So even though the main goal is still there, the feel of it will be different, just because the people are different and changing too,
Hmm.
and that's time. That's just how it goes.
Oh yeah, especially when you've been around as long as they have. Because what now? It's 15 years.
Hmm.
Wow, it's crazy to think about, but yeah, they're still doing really well. The consistent $2.5 million to charity twice a
Yep.
year. Yeah, I mean, I've gone to every event except the one since SGQ 2018. So obviously, I can't speak for the olden days. I kind of wish I could experience the olden days. I've heard some very like it was a different vibe. They both have the eras all have their pros and cons, but
Hmm.
yeah, I can only relive it through other people's experience. So I'd like to ask about that kind of stuff because if you look at like 2013 especially because 2014 was like the first million
That was the big year.
the
Yep.
big year. So getting any like info prior to that, it's just so different than what it is now. So I
And I
just
can
find
say
that
that,
history interesting.
yeah, I can say that that's true for most meta or competitive gaming
Oh yeah.
as well. Just with the internet how it is now, people interact in a very different way, and certainly some things are a lot more convenient, and some things are a lot less necessary. When I was in my Smash Brothers days, you get together and you do a tournament, and you get people driving in from all over the state, all over different states to just come together, compete. Most of them aren't, or they're going to spend a lot just to be able to participate there, and they're not going to come away with really any money in return. But it's a feeling of the community, of being with people who are of that same like similar mindset to you. They want to travel, they want to get better, they want to experience the game with other people who have the passion for it in the same way they do. And the early GDQs were much closer to that kind of feel from how I experienced my Smash Brothers days, and that's partly why it stuck with me because at least in my memories, some of the Smash Brothers events that I attended were among the best in my entire lifetime. Just of the people I was meeting, the experiences that I was having that were with or without the game that we're primarily playing.
Hmm. Yeah. Again, my favorite part about GDQs are the community being able to just be with them. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm glad that stayed true as long as it's been around. And it sounds like that's most people's shared experience, not just again with speedrunning, but like maybe Smash events or any sort of community gathering for whatever purpose or reason it is. That seems to be the best part about it to most people. So I'm glad that can stay true for years and years and years, decades even, in some of these
Mhm.
cases, because especially with Melee, what you were around before speedrunning, obviously by quite a bit. That's got to be like nearly 2 decades now, right?
Oh yeah, and I mean, well, Melee is still a popular game
Oh
and
yeah.
played in very different ways, and some things that me as an old timer I can't necessarily uh, keep up with. Controller modifications becoming kind of a standard, and some other stuff that takes off in the community when I just get in and hit buttons and try to get in people's heads. And that's the way to play it for me. But yeah, time's passed. Still look back on it fondly, and even though it's come a lot further, the game that I played still lives with me.
Yep. That's what's most important. So, um, just out of curiosity, because we've talked about a lot of the history of stuff, I kind of want to talk about the future of things because you have this book here, but
Hmm.
it's been a few years since it's been released. Obviously, I think it's still a good source of information. It can be timeless, especially when you talk about the history. Like, it's important that's documented and that can't be changed. It's history. It happened.
Hmm.
But is there anything that you would change or go into more detail about if you were to do it in modern day? Because 6 years is a long time. Speedrunning and
Sure.
the streaming space has changed a lot since.
Every once in a while, I think about what I would change and put in for a second edition, and there's a variety of things. Even though I poured my knowledge at the time into this book for the best of my ability, um, there's a mastery of communication that you still only develop over time, and there's a variety of things that I can look back in and say, well, I guess I shared my core idea there, but I could do better. I could come up with different examples. I can come up with a new way to possibly make that easier to understand for wider variety of the audience. Obviously, there's some new amounts of history to explore too, but for the most part, I think it would just be a matter of cleaning up, possibly adding in a few new chapters around other ways to think about it, other ways to optimize yourself, and really explore that. And I think about it, it's unlikely to happen in at least the near term, but I still have all the right contacts to make something happen there if I ever had the time to actually work on it. Other than that, like knowing the process of making a book now informs me a little bit better too of what else would I want to share with people. And every once in a while, I think, oh, maybe I'll make the big book of glitches someday, and it's just here's the documentation of 1,001 glitches from any amount of different games and why they happen, what it can be used for, other trivia like that. It's a fun idea. It'd be an awful lot of work, and
Hmm.
I still have a doubt that it would pay off the effort invested. But that's not necessarily what it's about. It's just that still my own calculus has to go into the fact of um, I'm supporting not only myself but my family, and if I'm investing my time into something, it should be something that ultimately helps my family too.
Hmm.
So I have to consider all those different aspects now. Anytime I'm putting in time on hobbies, time on just growing and sharing what I can.
Mhm. So in theory, there could be information to put into another book of some sort, at least.
There certainly could. There certainly
Mhm.
could.
And if you could like put more modern information into this, would it be like a sequel or more like a just a revision of things?
I think it would be I'd treat it just close to a second edition, and it's not just a like I cleaned up a few words here and there, but more specifically, I myself have grown since I wrote it, and I have new insights to share, new ways of looking at things, especially more recently as I've become a game designer myself. I have a different perspective on that and how to approach a lot of these different things. So it helps out a lot just to look at even where my thoughts were in the past, but where I would add on things that I've learned since that really would help to apply and let the experience be that much more fruitful.
Mm-hmm. You're a game designer now?
I am somehow.
Hmm. I haven't heard about that myself, so
It's not something that I've advertised too broadly. We don't actually have a game out yet, but it's something we're actively preparing for um, release in the future.
got it. Well, I won't have you leak anything, obviously, unless you want to, but
I'll I'll keep all the alpha for right now, but
gotcha.
yeah.
But clearly it'll be good for speedrunning, of course. I assume.
Uh,
Oh,
Probably not actually, but
oh, interesting.
it's just where it lands. It's not something that I am in charge of, but it's something that my experience with speedrunning, understanding games, understanding core technical features, and so on, has turned out that I'm actually very good at informing people of what a game should be, could be, how to map it, and develop an economy, and all these other things. So the speedrunning lessons continue to pay off just in a way that I didn't anticipate.
I see. Well, I'm sure someone will still figure out a way to do it.
I'm not going to stop them.
Yeah, of course. Because whether it's good for it, not good for it, whether the game's good or bad, there's always I say every game has a reason to be speedrun. Every game has something unique about it that makes it worth
Mhm.
the time and effort if someone wants to put in said time and effort.
Yeah,
And that's why it'll never die because games are being released faster than anyone can reasonably catch up with them. So there's always something out there.
betcha.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of reaching a conclusion here.
Mhm.
Sounds like you've kind of went over everything. I mean, is there anything in your entire history of speedrunning we haven't dove into that you would like to?
Oh well, there's plenty more stories, plenty more details. For the purpose of the audience, I think we've covered the main aspects, which is
Mm-hmm.
there's always more to do. There's always more to learn and to just be engaged in the games that you're passionate about, whether you're speedrunning them or not. There's more ways to appreciate what's in front of you, and that's what you should be aiming for. And my advice to you, even as you're trying to find your way out of this frustration and so on, is to think back, identify what is the most fun for you, and chase that. And it doesn't always have to be about being at the top of a leaderboard, so long as you are getting something that you enjoy out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finding enjoyment is obviously the number one priority, or at least should be. And I'm sure myself and others have not done that always, but you know, if you know a thing or two, you know what truly matters, and eventually you'll you know get over the BS and get back to what really matters. I don't know. I'm trying to say something important here. I
It's
think
it's there. It's there. The main thing
it's the
is
thought that counts.
people get. There's certainly a variety of folks who get caught up in the community, and there's you players have to take the time to understand that the community exists there because there's some shared pursuit of a goal. But realistically, it's not to support the community, it's about the personal journey upon achieving that goal. And sometimes that's going to be a new world record. Sometimes that's just going to be you understanding how a glitch works in a game that you care about. And that's all well and good. It doesn't, not everything has to be for the community, for managing the community. It's all just on, you might say, a selfish level to just get the enjoyment for yourself, but that is games. Is that you're trying to find what makes it the most appealing for you. And for some folks, that is the community. For
Hmm.
other folks, it's the game and their own missions within it. So that's my note to everybody, is that regardless of what the standard is or what the expectation is, treat gaming, treat speedrunning as it's something that fulfills you, and get the most of it from there. There's no one correct way that everybody has to follow to make it reasonable and successful.
Hmm. For sure. Yep. Everyone has their own way of thinking and what benefits them personally. So I've
Mhm.
definitely, and again, like if your focus is the community and you lose the enjoyment in the doing it yourself, you can still be involved without having to do runs yourself. Plenty of options there. Speedrunning is not just about executing PB either. Big part of
Mhm.
it, but it's so much more now, and that's why it's so cool. No wrong
You
way to
got
go
it.
about it. All right. Well, I guess the last thing I'll really ask is just any long-term, short-term future plans you have for speedrunning or anything online. I guess short-term is a little iffy, but
I'd like to get back to those games that I still have a number of projects that I think are unfinished. And I
mhm,
mentioned Metal Walker earlier. That's certainly one of them. I want to at least get runs in that show off the route and see what kind of fun the playing it through in a speedrun setting actually is. I want to cap off my journey with Fireman. I really love that game, and I want to experience the peak of it. And closing out Metal Warriors might be fun too. If there's ever a time when I have multiple hours available to myself too, jumping back in and finally knocking out that Suikoden 2 speed run, especially now that there's an opportunity to kind of reroute or re-optimize things with the HD remaster. All of those are open, and I'd love to get back to it. And it's just a matter of weighing those priorities, and hopefully my own time opens up again to account for it.
so we can maybe expect a grand return at some point. Just not sure exactly when.
I don't know about a grand return, but I
Yeah, that's
think a
just what I'm
return
calling
is
it.
probably in the future. Yes.
Fair enough. And then I know we kind of talked about it, but in terms of like more content, maybe not just grinding runs, is there any plans for anything? Obviously, a game to look forward to, it sounds like, but
Um, well, yes, that's in the professional life.
hmm.
I still am stuck on the sharing of information, because as it's done now, I think a lot of communities could do better, and it just needs to have a way to be better. And for my own knowledge, like I said, I'm the sole source of knowledge of current techniques, reasons of anything for most of the games that I've run. And that means if I just drop off and stop being available on any of the social media or Discord or anything like that, that knowledge leaves with me. And people either have to figure it out again, or they have to try and divine it from any of the records I left behind, runs, artifacts, things like that. Um, my hope is to use some of the other web services that have come along to provide that information in a way that's searchable, that people can get to from just entering something in on Google, and like, oh, there's a page that's associated with this that catalogs at least everything that I had known up to a certain point. And I have some ideas for how to do that. Um, haven't made any of them fully available yet, but I do have a lot of my notes and tools and other stuff like that at least available on my GitHub. So um, trying to emphasize the different things that I have available in different ways and make them available hopefully in the long term, as opposed to mm, just folks having to work through me if they want to get any of the historical information on what's going on with them.
Hmm. Yeah, I know some people have tried to make some websites to try to catalog information. I don't think any of them have stood the test of time, though. Obviously,
Mm.
SRC will have like its guide pages and stuff, and you can use that. But I think most of that wouldn't, yeah, come up in like a search or something. You have to like kind of go know where to look to find some stuff. So I guess a more centralized kind of information sharing thing would be very beneficial. Just nothing has stuck around yet. So
Mhm.
if that could become something, that would certainly be useful.
It's a problem with just the way that folks use the internet nowadays,
Mm,
and it's not about like, hey, force them to do something a different way. It's to figure out how best to work within the structure that they consume content and media now.
mm, yeah. And especially with the community being so big, it's hard to streamline
Mhm.
everything into one centralized place. So, but you never know. We're always
Yeah,
learning and figuring out better ways to put what we need to put out there. So, yeah, we'll see what the future holds, I guess.
absolutely.
Well, I think that's everything. If
Great.
if you're satisfied with everything we've talked about, then I'm satisfied. So,
We covered a lot of bases. I mean, there's infinitely more information out there, but I think just this will hopefully satisfy a few folks and lead into some of what the past was. So,
mm-hmm.
yeah, thanks for having me on today. It's been a pleasure to dive into some of this. And yeah, I hope it was useful for you too.
Oh yeah, no, it was a great episode. I love learning about all the history of this kind of stuff, and then there are a lot of stories there that I've never heard of and feel like aren't really out there that would be interesting. Some unique content described here, I guess. So, but the
That's
last
cool.
thing I'll have you do is just self promote however you want.
Uh, well, in that case, I'd say you can subscribe to my stream. I haven't used it in a while, but when I am back, that's where I'll be. So that's just Twitch TV Omnigamer. You can check out Speedrun Science, my book. I've got a direct link, just speedrunscience.com. That'll take you to Fangamer's purchase page for it. That's, I believe, still the only place that you can get it. It's not on Amazon or anything like that. But let that inform you. And otherwise, I've got a big back catalog of YouTube videos covering my runs, covering old fighting game videos that I collected in various capacities, and yeah, go check those out. That's just youtube.com/omnigamer, and yeah, whatever you can that provides any of my existing content in a beneficial way, go for it. And I hope it's all enjoyed.
All right, fair enough. Well, we'll call it a day here, I guess. So, just thanks for
Great.
watching, everyone, whether you're watching on Twitch or YouTube. Appreciate it. And
Hmm.
just stay tuned for new episodes every Sunday, as always.
Yeah.
Appreciate your time watching. And yeah, I guess we will say our goodbyes now. So, yeah, take
Great.
care.
Take care, all. Thank you so much.